From the time we are children, most of us are taught a single story about life, that the only way to succeed, to achieve happiness, and to create meaning is through relentless hard work. We grow up hearing phrases like, no pain, no gain, you have to hustle if you want results, and success is reserved for those who work the hardest. This cultural myth becomes deeply ingrained in our subconscious, shaping the way we approach everything, from our careers to our relationships. But as Owen Hermstring points out in The Law Behind the Laws, this idea of glorifying constant struggle is not only misleading, it is one of the main reasons why so many people live lives full of exhaustion, frustration, and disappointment. The truth, he suggests, is that the universe was not designed to reward sheer effort alone. It responds instead to alignment, energy, and inner coherence. When you believe that hard work is the only way, you unconsciously set yourself up for resistance. Think of it like swimming against the current in a river. You may move forward, but every inch comes at the cost of incredible struggle, and eventually you collapse from fatigue. Hermstring explains that when we live this way, pushing, forcing, grinding, we confuse effort with progress. We assume that struggle itself is proof we are doing the right thing, when in reality, it is often proof that we are disconnected from the flow of universal law. He writes that one of the hidden truths behind effortless living is this: when you are aligned, less effort achieves more. When you are misaligned, more effort achieves less. This inversion is one of the central lessons people resist the most, because it challenges everything society has taught them. The myth of hard work also creates a dangerous illusion of control. We begin to believe that if we just do more, push harder, sleep less, and sacrifice more, then we can bend reality to our will. But life does not work that way. As Hermstring emphasizes, the laws behind the laws operate independently of how much sweat you pour into the system. For instance, you might spend years working long hours at a job you hate, yet never see the recognition or financial stability you crave. Why? Because your energy, your subconscious beliefs, and your inner narrative are out of alignment with the outcomes you want. The law responds not to the volume of your effort, but to the quality of your vibration. Another consequence of the hard work myth is that it blinds us to the signs of resistance. Many people stay in toxic relationships or unfulfilling careers because they think that enduring pain and fighting through constant struggle is noble. They tell themselves, if I just work harder, it will pay off eventually. But what they fail to see is that the very persistence of struggle is a signal from life itself that they are out of sync. As Hermstring explains, when you are aligned, things begin to unfold with a sense of ease. You still take action, but your actions are guided, supported, and magnified by universal law. Instead of dragging a heavy cart uphill, you feel as if life is carrying you forward. To illustrate this, Hermstring shares an analogy in his book. Imagine two farmers planting seeds. The first farmer ignores the seasons, plows in frozen soil, and waters his crops erratically. He works day and night, sweating, exhausted, believing his sheer effort will force the earth to produce. The second farmer understands the laws of nature. He waits for the right season, plants in fertile soil, and waters consistently. His workload may be less dramatic, but his harvest is abundant. The first farmer worships hard work. The second farmer understands alignment. Which one represents the way most people live today? Too often we are the first farmer, exhausting ourselves in frozen soil, never realizing that the problem is not our lack of effort, but our lack of alignment with natural law. This shift in understanding is radical because it removes the glorification of struggle. Struggle is not virtuous. It is not the measure of your worth. As Hermstring notes, the universe does not keep score of your sweat. It responds to your state. When you internalize this, you begin to see how much unnecessary effort you've been pouring into areas of life that were never meant to flow in that direction. Instead of asking, am I working hard enough? The real question becomes, am I aligned enough? Of course, this does not mean that effort has no place. Effort is still necessary, but effort, when aligned, feels very different. It feels natural, inspired, even joyful at times. You may still put in long hours, but those hours are fueled by energy instead of drained by resistance. A musician can practice all day without feeling depleted if they are in love with the music. An entrepreneur can build tirelessly if their work is aligned with their vision and values. The problem is not effort itself. The problem is effort disconnected from alignment, which breeds exhaustion without results. Effortless living, then, is not about avoiding work or embracing laziness. It is about realigning your life so that your work flows with the current of universal law. This begins by questioning the subconscious myth you've been carrying, that your value, your success, and your destiny are tied to how much you struggle. Once you see that this belief is false, you can start to free yourself from the chains of glorified suffering and instead seek the deeper truth. Life was designed to flow. Hermstring insists that when you step out of the myth of hard work, you begin to see a different kind of reality emerge. Synchronicities appear. Opportunities seem to come to you rather than you chasing them down. Relationships form more naturally. This is not magic, nor is it luck. It is the natural consequence of aligning with the laws that govern reality. And it all starts with the courage to reject the story you've been told about struggle being the only path to success. There's a hidden truth behind every successful life, every effortless transformation, every meaningful change. It didn't begin with action. It began with a state of being. Before the first decision was made, before the first word was spoken or step taken, there was energy. Owen Hermstring, in The Law Behind the Laws, calls this the foundational law of energy alignment, the idea that your emotional and energetic state precedes and shapes your reality. And if you don't understand this principle, you may spend years taking action from the wrong state, wondering why things never work out the way you want. Most people live backwards. They believe that doing creates being. Once I succeed, I'll feel confident. Once I meet the right person, I'll feel loved. Once I get out of debt, I'll feel safe. But Hermstring turns this logic upside down, or rather, right side up. He teaches that you must feel it first before you see it. You must embody the energy of the reality you seek before it materializes. Why? Because the universe does not respond to your goals, it responds to your frequency. If your body is in survival, your thoughts in fear, and your heart in resentment, your outer world will match that vibration, no matter how many goals you write down or actions you take. This principle is what separates inspired creators from unconscious reactors. When your internal state is chaotic, unhealed, anxious, or disconnected, the actions you take from that state will carry the same frequency. You might start a business out of fear of being broke and attract more scarcity. You might enter a relationship out of fear of being alone and repeat the same painful patterns. As Hermstring writes, action taken from a wounded state invites results that mirror the wound. This isn't punishment, it's feedback. The universe is a mirror, and your state is the original blueprint. So what is a state, really? It's the sum of your dominant emotions, beliefs, expectations, and subconscious programming in the present moment. And here's the key. You cannot fake your state. You might say affirmations all day, smile in the mirror, or visualize success. But if your body is holding anxiety, your subconscious will override your intentions. That's why some people say manifestation doesn't work. It's not that the laws have failed, it's that the person never truly changed their state. To understand this, Hermstring gives a powerful analogy. Imagine two people walking into a room. One is calm, grounded, present. The other is tense, insecure, desperate to impress. Neither has said a word yet, but you feel their energy. The first draws people in effortlessly. The second makes people uncomfortable. Why? Because energy is the first language. It's always broadcasting, always creating impressions. And the same principle applies to the universe. Before it responds to your actions, it responds to your essence. This is why Hermstring emphasizes the inner preparation over the outer execution. You must become the kind of person who naturally attracts the life you desire. That doesn't mean pretending. It means shifting your nervous system, reprogramming your beliefs, and restoring emotional coherence, so that when you take action, It comes from a place of alignment, not desperation. Think about it. When you feel grateful, abundant, peaceful, don't your decisions change? Don't you move differently, speak differently, trust more? He writes, "To create a different reality, you must first become a different signal. Your state is your signal. If you are sending out fear, the world sends fear back. If you are broadcasting love, the world responds with connection. It may not happen instantly, but it always happens. Energy precedes outcome. That's why, as Hermstring says, you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are." Let's take a common example. Someone stuck in a cycle of failure. They've read all the books, made the vision boards, tried waking up at 5 a.m., but nothing changes. Why? Because deep down they still believe they are unworthy. Their nervous system is addicted to chaos. Their inner narrative is filled with shame or doubt. So even though their actions look productive, the state behind them is misaligned. They are trying to build a mansion on broken foundations. Until the state shifts, the results will always regress. In contrast, someone who has done the inner work, who has healed their fear, forgiven their past, learned to regulate their emotions, can often achieve more with less effort. Why? Because they are no longer fighting themselves. Their energy flows in one direction. Their actions carry power. Hermstring describes this as frictionless creation, not because life becomes perfect, but because your inner state stops sabotaging your progress. When your mind, body, and soul are coherent, life opens up. But this principle also requires responsibility. You must stop blaming external forces for your internal state. The job, the partner, the economy, they are all reflections, not causes. Hermstring writes, "You are not the victim of your life. You are the transmitter of it." This is a hard truth. It means that changing your life begins not with doing more, but with being differently. It demands honesty, courage, self-awareness. But once you shift your state even slightly, the feedback loop begins to change. New opportunities emerge, new people show up, new outcomes unfold. So how do you change your state? Hermstring doesn't give gimmicks, he gives process. First, awareness. Identify the dominant emotions and beliefs running your life. Then, regulation. Learn to calm your nervous system through breath, presence, and embodiment. Next, reprogramming. Replace the old internal story with a new one, not through force but through repetition and feeling. And finally, alignment. Live your days as if you already were who you seek to become. Not pretending, but embodying. When you shift your energy first, the outer world eventually follows. Maybe not instantly, maybe not how you expect, but always in resonance. As Hermstring reminds us, you don't chase reality. You invite it through your state. And once you truly grasp this principle, the myth of constant struggle begins to dissolve. You see that the real work was always internal, not in trying to control the world, but in becoming the person to whom the life you want naturally flows. Every person at some point has felt it. That invisible wall that seems to rise just as you are about to make progress. You tell yourself you want change, you dream about success, you commit to new habits, and for a short while things appear to move. But then something happens. Procrastination sneaks in, doubts whisper louder, distractions pull you off track, or sudden emergencies steal your time. This is not bad luck. It is not coincidence. It is inner resistance, the silent force that sabotages your flow without you even realizing it. Owen Hermstring, in The Law Behind the Laws, describes this as one of the most deceptive obstacles to transformation, because it disguises itself as logic, as caution, or even as self-care, while it is really fear in disguise. Inner resistance is not a conscious choice. No one wakes up and says, "Today I will destroy my progress." Instead, it's a subconscious mechanism designed to keep you safe. The mind equates the unknown with danger. Any attempt to grow, to stretch, to live differently triggers a primal response. Stay where you are. The subconscious says, better the misery you know than the possibility you don't. This is why people often remain in toxic jobs, broken relationships, or unhealthy patterns. They may hate it consciously, but subconsciously it feels familiar, and the familiar is mistaken for safe. Hermstring explains that this resistance operates like an internal contract you never signed but still obey. It is built from childhood conditioning, reinforced by repeated disappointments, and powered by the nervous system's addiction to survival. So when you try to move forward, your body reacts as if you are walking into fire. Resistance whispers thoughts like, "You're not ready yet, maybe next year. Who do you think you are? People like you don't succeed." These thoughts feel like truth, but they are simply echoes of the old script your subconscious keeps replaying. The tragedy is that most people don't recognize resistance for what it is. They confuse it with intuition. They say, "My gut told me not to risk it," but what they're really feeling is the contraction of fear, not the wisdom of intuition. How can you tell the difference? Intuition is calm, clear, steady. Resistance is anxious, restless, filled with excuses. Intuition moves you toward expansion. Resistance keeps you small. Yet because resistance sounds so rational, so protective, many people obey it and call it wisdom. This is why Hermstring insists that awareness is the first step to dissolving resistance. You must catch yourself in the act of self-sabotage. You must question the inner voice that says, "Don't bother, it won't work." Instead of treating it as truth, you must expose it as a pattern. He writes, "Resistance is not who you are. It is the echo of who you used to be. By naming it, by recognizing it, you weaken its grip. The unconscious becomes conscious and suddenly you have a choice. But recognition alone is not enough. You must also learn to sit with the discomfort resistance brings. Most people run from discomfort. The moment they feel doubt, tension, or fear, they retreat. But the paradox is that freedom lies on the other side of that very discomfort. Hermstring compares it to training a muscle. At first, the weight feels unbearable. But if you stop every time it burns, you never grow stronger. Resistance is the burn of transformation. It signals that you are stretching beyond the old limits. If you can breathe through it, stay with it, and act despite it, you reclaim your power. Here's a practical example. Imagine someone finally decides to start a business. They feel inspired, energized, full of vision. But within weeks, resistance creeps in. They suddenly don't have time to work on their idea. They spend hours scrolling online instead of building. They convince themselves they need more courses, more certifications, more preparation. From the outside, it looks like laziness or lack of discipline, but underneath, it's fear of failure disguised as busyness. Resistance keeps them safe by keeping them stuck. Unless they learn to see it for what it is, years will pass and the dream will remain a fantasy. Hermstring warns of an even deeper trap. Sometimes resistance creates chaos in your life just to distract you. Unnecessary conflicts, forgotten deadlines, health flare-ups, not all, but many are unconscious strategies to avoid stepping into the unknown. This doesn't mean you're broken. It means your subconscious would rather endure chaos than surrender control. But the irony is that control is an illusion. The more you cling to safety, the more life slips through your fingers. The only true control comes from flow, from aligning with the deeper laws that shape reality. So how do you overcome resistance? Hermstring offers a paradoxical answer. You don't fight it, you integrate it. Fighting resistance strengthens it, like wrestling with your own shadow. Instead, you acknowledge it, thank it for trying to protect you, and move forward anyway. It's not about eliminating fear. It's about refusing to let fear drive the car. Courage is not the absence of resistance. It is the decision to keep going while resistance rides in the back seat. And here is the key. The more often you act despite resistance, the weaker it becomes. Each time you face it, you prove to your nervous system that change is not fatal. Slowly, your subconscious rewires. What once felt terrifying becomes normal. What once triggered resistance becomes effortless. This is how people break free from old patterns, not by waiting for fear to disappear, but by living fully in its presence until it dissolves. Hermstring writes, "The cage of resistance has no lock. The door was always open. That is the great revelation. Resistance only has the power you give it. The moment you stop obeying its voice, you realize you were free all along. You don't need permission. You don't need guarantees. You only need the willingness to walk through discomfort into a larger life. So next time you feel yourself holding back, delaying, making excuses, ask, is this intuition or is it resistance? Am I protecting myself from danger or am I sabotaging my own flow? And if the answer is resistance, smile, because that means you're standing at the threshold of growth. And the only thing left is to step forward. When Owen Hermstring speaks of effortless living in the law behind the laws, he makes it clear that flow is not simply about positive thinking or blind optimism. Flow emerges when the fragmented parts of a person, mind, body, and spirit, stop pulling in different directions and begin to move together as one. He calls this principle the law of inner coherence, and he argues that without it, no amount of effort or intention will sustain lasting change. It is the difference between rowing against the current with 3 oars paddling separately and gliding downstream with all oars synchronized. Most people are unaware of how deeply divided they are inside. The mind wants one thing, the body resists it, and the spirit remains unheard. Consider the person who decides to pursue a healthier lifestyle. Consciously, the mind says, I want to lose weight and feel better. But the body is addicted to old habits. Sugary foods, late nights, stress cycles. Meanwhile, the deeper spirit longs for peace and balance, but its voice is drowned out by the noise of cravings and thoughts. The result is inner conflict, and where there is conflict, there can be no flow. Hermstring explains your outer life mirrors the inner. Division within breeds chaos without. Alignment within births harmony without. Inner coherence begins with awareness of these 3 dimensions. The mind is the seat of beliefs, narratives, and logic. The body is the carrier of habits, emotions, and cellular memory. The spirit is the deeper intelligence that connects you to the law behind the laws. Each plays a vital role. When one is ignored or suppressed, imbalance results. The overthinker who lives entirely in the mind may be brilliant but anxious and restless. The person who indulges only the body may enjoy pleasure but lack meaning. The one who neglects the spirit may succeed outwardly yet feel an emptiness inside. True effortless living requires listening to all 3 and bringing them into alignment. So how does one achieve coherence? Hermstring suggests beginning with the body, because the body is the most honest. You can deceive your mind with affirmations and rationalizations, but your body cannot lie. It reveals the truth in tension, illness, fatigue, and cravings. If your body is exhausted, no amount of mental intention will carry you into flow. This is why practices like breathwork, movement, and rest are not luxuries, but necessities. They reset the nervous system, preparing the ground for alignment. A coherent body becomes a calm foundation for the mind and spirit to align. Next comes the mind. Here the challenge is to notice the scripts that run automatically. These are the inner contracts discussed earlier. Beliefs such as I don't deserve ease or nothing good comes without struggle. When the mind clings to such beliefs, it sabotages the body and ignores the spirit. Hermstring encourages the daily practice of examining thoughts and asking, is this truth or is this programming? This is not about suppressing the mind, but about re-educating it to serve alignment rather than resist it. As he writes, the mind was meant to be a servant, not a master. Until you remember this, you remain a slave to its noise. Finally, the spirit must be invited back into the conversation. For many, this feels abstract, but Hermstring insists it is the most practical step. Spirit speaks through intuition, through moments of deep peace, through a sense of rightness that transcends logic. It is the quiet knowing that guides without shouting. To access it, one must create silence, through meditation, reflection, or simply time away from constant distraction. Spirit does not compete with the loudness of the mind or the demands of the body. It waits patiently for you to listen. When you do, its guidance often simplifies what once felt overwhelming. When mind, body, and spirit align, something extraordinary happens. Decisions that once felt agonizing become clear. Actions that once felt heavy become natural. Even challenges lose their power to overwhelm because the inner conflict is gone. This is why Hermstring calls inner coherence the gateway to flow. He gives the example of an entrepreneur who struggled for years, burning out repeatedly. The breakthrough didn't come from working harder, but from aligning his body with rest, his mind with supportive beliefs, and his spirit with a deeper purpose. Once coherent, opportunities seemed to appear effortlessly, and his business thrived without the constant push. One of the most powerful signs of coherence is synchronicity. Hermstring points out that when you are aligned, life seems to cooperate with you. You meet the right people at the right time. Obstacles dissolve unexpectedly. The exact resource you need shows up just as you need it. To the untrained eye, it looks like luck. But in reality, it is the natural response of the universe to a coherent frequency. When your inner state is whole, your outer world reflects that wholeness. But sustaining coherence requires practice. It is not a one-time achievement, but a daily alignment. This is where rituals become essential. Morning practices that ground the body, mindful breaks that recalibrate the mind, evening reflections that reconnect with spirit. These are not chores. Over time, they rewire your system so that coherence becomes natural, not forced. There is also a warning here. The modern world is designed to fragment you. Endless notifications, cultural conditioning, and constant stress pull your mind, body, and spirit apart. If you don't consciously choose coherence, incoherence becomes your default. Hermstring emphasizes, the world profits from your division, but your freedom begins with your alignment. This truth is why so many people live exhausted, anxious, and disconnected. Not because life is meant to be hard, but because they have forgotten the law of inner coherence. The promise of this law is simple yet profound. When you align mind, body, and spirit, you no longer need to force life. You live in harmony with yourself and, as a result, in harmony with reality. The struggle ends, not because challenges disappear, but because you are no longer divided against yourself. You face life as a whole being, and life responds in kind. Most people live in a constant tension between intention and action. They know what they want. They may even visualize it. But when the time comes to act, the energy feels heavy, forced, and full of resistance. This is why so many resolutions collapse by February, and why so many dreams are left half-built. Owen Hermstring, in The Law Behind the Laws, explains that this collapse happens because action is often taken out of alignment, the body feels another, and the spirit is ignored. The result is that action becomes exhausting rather than empowering, but when alignment precedes action, something shifts. Doing becomes effortless. Effortless action does not mean inaction. It does not mean sitting back and waiting for the universe to deliver. It means that the actions you take are carried by flow instead of forced by willpower alone. Hermstring often repeats, aligned action is not less action. It is the right action at the right time with the right energy behind it. This distinction is critical. Many people take massive action that leads nowhere because they are moving from desperation, fear, or scarcity. But a single action taken from coherence can create momentum that years of struggle never achieved. Think of a river. When you paddle against the current, every stroke is exhausting, progress is slow, and frustration builds. But when you align with the current, the same stroke carries you far with little effort. The river does most of the work. Life works the same way. When your energy is aligned, small consistent actions carry you farther than monumental efforts taken in resistance. This is why Hermstring urges people to stop obsessing over doing more and start focusing on aligning more deeply before they act. How do you know when action is aligned? There are 3 signs. First, there is clarity. The path ahead feels obvious, not confusing. Second, there is lightness. Even if the work is challenging, there is an underlying sense of ease. Third, there is synchronicity. Doors open, resources appear, and what seemed impossible suddenly becomes possible. These are not coincidences. They are the natural markers of aligned action. One of Hermstring's examples is of a woman who wanted to change careers. For years, she tried networking, rewriting her resume, taking courses, but nothing worked. Every step felt like pushing a boulder uphill. Then she paused, worked on inner coherence, and listened to her deeper spirit. Suddenly, clarity came. She didn't want just any job. She wanted to teach what she loved. Once aligned, her next action was obvious. She began sharing her knowledge online. Within months, opportunities found her. What had felt impossible for years unfolded effortlessly once her actions flowed from alignment. Another important truth is that aligned action is often smaller than people expect. The ego craves dramatic leaps, but flow favors consistent steps. A phone call, a meeting, a single post. These tiny actions, when aligned, ripple outward with disproportionate impact. Hermstring warns against underestimating them. Alignment multiplies the effect of action. What feels like a drop becomes a wave. This is why people who appear lucky often are simply aligned. Their small actions carry extraordinary results because they ride the current of coherence. Still, many resist aligned action because it feels too easy. We are conditioned to believe that anything worthwhile must be difficult. If something feels effortless, people distrust it. They think, this can't be the right path, it doesn't hurt enough. This is one of the deepest lies of modern culture, and it keeps people locked in cycles of unnecessary struggle. Hermstring flips this belief. Ease is not the enemy of growth. Ease is the evidence of alignment. When life feels lighter, it is not because you are lazy. It is because you are flowing with the law behind the laws. There is also a discipline to aligned action. While it feels natural, it still requires consistency. You cannot align once and expect flow to last forever. Just as you bathe daily to stay clean, you must align daily to stay in flow. Meditation, gratitude, self-reflection, body care. These are not luxuries, but the rituals that keep action aligned. Without them, old patterns creep back, and action once again becomes forced. One of the biggest misconceptions is that aligned action avoids challenges. In reality, challenges still come, but they are met with resilience rather than resistance. When you act from alignment, obstacles feel like part of the journey, not proof that you should quit. They test your coherence, sharpen your clarity, and often redirect you toward an even better path. In this way, aligned action transforms setbacks into stepping stones. Perhaps the most liberating truth Hermstring shares is this. Aligned action is not about doing what you think you should, but about doing what your deeper being knows you must. This requires courage, because alignment often leads you away from cultural expectations and into unfamiliar territory. But once you taste the difference between forced effort and aligned flow, you will never want to return to the old way. Life becomes too precious to waste on misaligned struggle. Ultimately, aligned action is the bridge between vision and reality. Without action, alignment is only potential. Without alignment, action is only exhaustion. But together, they create effortless momentum. They allow you to live not as someone constantly fighting against life, but as someone carried by it, co-creating with the law behind the laws. If alignment is the current that carries you into flow, then gratitude and presence are the anchors that keep you from drifting away. Owen Hermstring makes this point clear in The Law Behind the Laws. Living effortlessly is not a one-time revelation but a daily practice, and without gratitude and presence, alignment easily collapses back into old patterns of struggle. These two forces, gratitude and presence, are deceptively simple, yet they have the power to transform how you experience every moment of your life. Gratitude, at its core, is the act of acknowledging the abundance that already exists. It shifts your focus from what is missing to what is present, from lack to fullness. Most people live in a perpetual state of not enough money, not enough success, not enough love. This state of lack produces restlessness and pushes them into forced action. But when you practice gratitude, you reprogram the subconscious to recognize sufficiency in the now. As Hermstring writes, gratitude closes the gap between where you are and where you think you must be. It reminds you that flow is already here. This is not to say gratitude means ignoring desires or settling for less. On the contrary, it is what fuels manifestation. When you are grateful, you align your energy with abundance, and abundance attracts more abundance. Think of it as tuning a radio. Gratitude sets your frequency to receive. Without it, You keep transmitting signals of lack, and the universe mirrors back the scarcity you feel. Gratitude is not positive thinking, it is energetic alignment. Presence, on the other hand, is about fully inhabiting the now. Most people live either in the past, replaying mistakes, regrets, old pains, or in the future, worrying, projecting, fantasizing. Both rob them of power because the only place action and transformation can occur is here, in this moment. Hermstring insists that presence is the gateway to the law behind the laws. He explains, the present moment is not where you arrive after fixing your life. It is where life is. If you cannot find flow here, you will not find it anywhere else. Presence dismantles resistance. When you are here and now, you are not fighting with yesterday's failures or tomorrow's uncertainties. You are simply responding to what is. And in that simplicity, life feels lighter. The body relaxes, the mind quiets, and the spirit can speak. Flow becomes possible because there is no longer a tug-of-war with what was or what might be. The real power comes when gratitude and presence combine. Gratitude roots you in appreciation. Presence roots you in now. Together, they shift your entire state. Imagine waking in the morning. Without gratitude or presence, the first thought might be stress about unfinished work or worry about bills. The nervous system immediately contracts. But with gratitude, you notice the softness of the bed, the warmth of the blanket, the gift of breath. With presence, you are not rushing into the day before it arrives. You are here, receiving this moment. The state you begin the day with becomes the current that carries you through it. Hermstring emphasizes the importance of rituals to cultivate these qualities. Gratitude lists, spoken affirmations, or even silent reflection at meals are not cliches. They are practices that train the subconscious. Likewise, mindfulness, meditation, or simply pausing to breathe anchor you in presence. The point is not the form, but the consistency. A single act of gratitude lifts your state briefly, but a daily practice rewires your entire nervous system. There is also a profound truth hidden here. Gratitude and presence collapse the illusion of control. When you are grateful, you stop demanding life to be different before you allow yourself to feel joy. When you are present, you stop trying to manipulate outcomes before they even happen. Both free you from the exhausting habit of wrestling with reality. They return you to flow, where life unfolds with less resistance. To understand how powerful this is, consider the opposite. A person who is ungrateful and absent lives in constant resistance. They focus only on what is lacking, fueling frustration. They dwell on the past or fear the future, fueling anxiety. Even when opportunities come, they miss them, because their energy is tuned to scarcity and distraction. Life feels heavy, not because it must be, but because they are out of alignment with the present abundance. Hermstring illustrates this with a metaphor. Gratitude is like water, presence is like soil, and alignment is the seed. Without water and soil, the seed cannot grow, no matter how powerful it is. Likewise, without gratitude and presence, alignment cannot take root in daily life. You may glimpse flow temporarily, but it will not last. But if you water your life with gratitude and ground it in presence, the seed of alignment grows into a tree of effortless living. The beauty of these practices is that they are available to everyone at any moment, regardless of circumstance. You do not need wealth, status, or perfect conditions to be grateful or present. In fact, some of the most aligned individuals are those who have the least materially, but have mastered gratitude and presence. Their lives radiate ease, not because everything is easy, but because their inner state is coherent. The challenge, of course, is consistency. Gratitude feels natural when life is going well, but what about when it is not? Presence feels easy on a calm day, but what about in the middle of chaos? This is where discipline transforms into liberation. Choosing gratitude in difficulty shifts your energy when it matters most. Choosing presence in chaos anchors you in power when others lose theirs. These are not small practices. They are revolutionary acts that rewrite the script of your reality. In the end, gratitude and presence are not add-ons to effortless living. They are its foundation. They keep you aligned, coherent, and open to flow. They remind you that you do not have to wait for life to be perfect to live effortlessly. Life is already happening. The gift is already here. And when you recognize it, when you inhabit it, you step into the current of ease that was always waiting for you. One of the biggest challenges people face when they begin applying Owen Hermstring's teachings from the law behind the laws is doubt. Even after practicing alignment, coherence, gratitude, and presence, they often ask themselves, how do I know if it's working? How do I know if I'm truly aligned or if I'm just imagining it? This question is valid because, unlike physical achievements, inner transformation is not immediately visible. But Hermstring offers reassurance. Alignment always produces signs. Flow leaves fingerprints. Once you understand how to recognize them, you will never question whether you are on the right path again. The first and most obvious sign of flow is synchronicity. These are the meaningful coincidences that seem too precise to be accidents. You think of someone, and they call you. You imagine an opportunity, and it appears unexpectedly. You need a resource, and it shows up at the exact moment. To the logical mind, these events seem random. But Hermstring explains that synchronicity is reality's way of confirming alignment. He writes, "The universe is not silent. When you align with its deeper laws, it speaks back to you in patterns of precision. These events are not luck. They are proof that your frequency is coherent with the outcomes you seek." A second sign is a sense of ease, even in action. This doesn't mean that everything becomes effortless overnight, or that challenges vanish, but it does mean that the inner heaviness, the feeling of pushing against life, fades. Work feels lighter, conversations flow more naturally, and even problem-solving carries less tension. People around you may comment, "You look calmer," or "You're handling things differently." The external work may remain the same, but the internal experience shifts dramatically. This inner ease is one of the strongest indicators that you have moved from resistance to flow. Another powerful sign is clarity. In misalignment, decisions feel confusing, options feel overwhelming, and the mind loops in circles. But when you are in flow, choices become simpler. You may not see the entire path, but you see the next step clearly, and once you take it, the next one reveals itself. Hermstring compares this to driving at night. Your headlights don't illuminate the entire road, but they reveal enough to keep moving. In flow, life works the same way. You don't need to control the whole journey. You just need to trust the clarity of the step before you. Emotional resilience is also a key marker of alignment. In misalignment, small challenges feel devastating. A single rejection can spiral into despair. A small delay feels like catastrophe. But when aligned, you handle challenges differently. You may still feel disappointment or frustration, but they do not consume you. Instead, setbacks feel like feedback, not failure. Hermstring calls this the emotional immunity of alignment. You are no longer tossed around by every wave because you are anchored in the deeper current. Others may marvel at your composure, but to you, it feels natural because your sense of identity is no longer fragile. Flow also brings a heightened sense of intuition. You begin to notice subtle nudges, inner knowings, or quiet impulses that guide you toward the right actions. These are not loud commands or dramatic visions. They are gentle pulls, like a compass adjusting slightly. When you follow them, you find yourself in the right place at the right time. When you ignore them, you often realize later that they were pointing you towards something important. Hermstring emphasizes that intuition strengthens with trust. The more you listen, the louder it becomes. An often overlooked sign of flow is joy in simplicity. Many people expect alignment to feel like fireworks, grand miracles, or dramatic breakthroughs, but more often it shows up as quiet contentment. You enjoy a meal more fully, conversations feel richer, time in nature feels deeply satisfying. This joy is not dependent on circumstances. It arises naturally from presence and gratitude. Hermstring reminds readers that effortless living is not about escaping ordinary life, but about infusing the ordinary with extraordinary awareness. When brushing your teeth or walking to the store feels peaceful, you are living in flow. Another indicator is the quality of your relationships. Misalignment often creates conflict, miscommunication, or toxic dynamics. But when you are aligned, you attract people who mirror your coherence. Conversations deepen, connections strengthen, and even difficult relationships shift toward healing. This doesn't mean everyone approves of you. Sometimes alignment leads you to release people who no longer resonate. But even those endings feel less painful because they are seen as part of a larger flow, not as personal failure. Finally, one of the most profound signs of alignment is expansion. You notice that opportunities, creativity, and possibilities feel larger than before. Life stops feeling like a narrow corridor and begins to feel like an open landscape. This expansion may show up as new ideas, sudden inspiration, or bold desires you never considered before. It can feel both exciting and intimidating, but it is always accompanied by an inner sense of readiness. Expansion is life's way of saying, you are aligned enough to carry more. What's important to understand is that these signs are not rewards handed out sparingly. They are natural consequences of alignment. Just as heat is the natural sign of fire, flow is the natural sign of coherence. If you notice synchronicities, ease, clarity, resilience, intuition, joy, harmony, or expansion, you can trust that you are living the law behind the laws. But Hermstring offers a caution: don't chase the signs. If you obsess over synchronicities or demand constant miracles, you move out of presence and back into control. The signs are meant to reassure, not to become another form of addiction. True alignment is lived for its own sake. The signs are simply the echoes. In summary, you know you are aligned not by theory, but by experience. Life feels lighter, clearer, more connected. The outer world reflects your inner state. And once you see these signs, you no longer need to ask, am I aligned? The answer will be living itself through you. The greatest misunderstanding about effortless living is that it is a one-time breakthrough, a sudden shift that guarantees permanent freedom. People often read Owen Hermstring's The Law Behind the Laws, experience moments of deep alignment, and believe they have arrived. But alignment is not a destination, it is a practice. Without consistent integration, the old patterns of resistance and struggle will quietly resurface. Sustaining effortless living requires turning what once felt like effortful rituals into a natural lifestyle, until coherence becomes your default state. Hermstring stresses that the nervous system, like any muscle, needs repetition. You cannot meditate once, practice gratitude once, or align once and expect lifelong transformation. The subconscious mind is deeply programmed by decades of conditioning. To rewire it fully, alignment must become habitual. He writes, "Your old scripts will always whisper. The question is not whether they speak, but whether you still listen. The key is daily practice, because daily practice strengthens the new frequency until it overpowers the old." One of the most effective ways to sustain effortless living is through structured rituals. Hermstring often recommends beginning the day with an alignment practice, something simple yet powerful. This could be breathwork, meditation, journaling, or a gratitude list. The form matters less than the intention, starting the day in coherence rather than chaos. By anchoring yourself each morning, you program the subconscious to carry that state into the day. The difference between rushing into the world on autopilot and stepping into it consciously is the difference between living by default and living by design. Equally important are micro moments of alignment throughout the day. Life will inevitably pull you off balance. Stress, conflict, and distraction are part of the human experience, but you can choose to pause, breathe, and realign in any moment. Hermstring describes these pauses as mini resets, moments when you remind yourself, I am here, I am aligned, I am flowing. A single deep breath, a short reflection, or a conscious smile can shift your frequency immediately. When practiced consistently, these micro moments prevent small misalignments from snowballing into larger struggles. Evenings, too, are a powerful time for sustaining effortless living. Instead of collapsing into distraction, Hermstring advises closing the day with reflection. Ask, where did I live in alignment today? Where did resistance take over? What signs of flow did I notice? This is not about judgment, but awareness. By reviewing your day, You teach your subconscious what alignment looks like, and you reinforce the behaviors that sustain it. Over time, this nightly reflection builds a deep trust in your ability to live effortlessly, no matter what arises. Another crucial element is environment. Your surroundings either support alignment or sabotage it. Hermstring warns that many people unconsciously live in environments that keep them fragmented. Constant noise, negative influences, clutter, or toxic relationships. If you want effortless living to be a lifestyle, you must curate your environment intentionally. This doesn't mean isolating yourself, but choosing spaces and people that reinforce coherence. A peaceful home, a supportive community, or even a clean desk can serve as anchors for alignment. The more your environment mirrors your inner state, the easier it becomes to sustain flow. Hermstring also emphasizes the role of identity in sustaining effortless living. If you still see yourself as someone who struggles, someone who barely survives, then no practice will last. Your subconscious identity will sabotage it. To make alignment permanent, you must adopt a new identity. I am someone who lives in flow. I am someone who trusts the law behind the laws. When this identity becomes natural, your actions follow automatically. Identity shapes behavior more powerfully than willpower ever could. Of course, there will be setbacks. No one sustains perfect alignment every moment, but Hermstring reframes setbacks as part of the practice. Falling out of alignment is not failure, it is feedback. It shows you where old scripts still operate, where deeper healing is needed. The goal is not to avoid misalignment, but to shorten the time you remain there. At first, you may spend days in resistance. With practice, it becomes hours. Eventually, it becomes minutes. Sustaining effortless living is about resilience, not perfection. A key marker that effortless living has become a lifestyle is that it no longer feels like work. Practices like gratitude, presence, and alignment stop feeling like chores and start feeling like who you are. Just as brushing your teeth is no longer an effort but a habit, coherence becomes automatic. At this stage, you don't ask, "Am I aligned?" You simply live, and alignment expresses itself naturally. Perhaps the most inspiring truth Hermstring shares is this: sustaining effortless living doesn't just transform you, it transforms those around you. When you embody alignment, your energy influences others. People feel calmer in your presence, more hopeful, more open. Without preaching or forcing, you become a living demonstration of flow. Your life itself becomes the teaching, the evidence that effortless living is not a fantasy but a reality available to anyone who chooses to practice. In the end, sustaining effortless living means making peace with the process. There is no final arrival, no perfect state where challenges vanish. But there is a way of being where challenges no longer define you, where resistance no longer controls you, and where life unfolds with more ease than you ever thought possible. As Hermstring beautifully concludes, the law behind the laws is not something you visit, it is something you live. If this message resonated with you, don't let it end here. Share it so others can awaken too. Hit the like button, subscribe for more Owen Hermstring insights, and comment below. What's the biggest area of your life where you're ready to stop struggling and start flowing? Let's talk about it in the comments.